Hi, and welcome back to It's Just Business with Lovie. This is where candid conversations become practical lessons for entrepreneurs. Each story offers a chance to learn from their experiences, challenges, and decisions that shape the businesses we build. Here we aim to inspire, inform, and strengthen through meaningful conversations and shared experiences. Thanks for being here. Let's go. In the month of February, I posted about Black History Month, and we should not only talk about Black history of others. I feel like we all have what I call my history. We all have history within our families, and we need to stop and recognize that also, not only Black history, but all year round. So I wanted to recognize my dad for Black History Month as my Black history. He is the author of A View from Church Hill, Woke Up in My Right Mind, and there it is. So he is the one that introduced me into business. He is the one I worked with hand in hand learning business. And even though we owned a business together, we butt heads quite often. But I come to find out that that's because we're more alike than either one of us want to admit. The other thing about my dad is that in this area, people often called him officer friendly, because he worked with a project with the Sears Foundation to develop officer-friendly kits to go into the classrooms in Chicago. They were in the classrooms here in this area and also, I believe, nationwide. But don't hold me to that. I'm going to get him to answer those questions. And there goes. So I just wanted to turn it over to you for a minute. Welcome in, Dad. I want to go ahead and give you this opportunity to tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
I'm John, 89. And I was in the Navy for 12 years. Then I went into police work, good police work. I wasn't one of the bad guys. I was one of the good guys. While on the police department, I was partners in two businesses. One was a record shop. We call it the Soul Shack Record Shop. And then we went into anytime catering service. And after I retired, was a family deal. We went into the Cold Stone Creamery. We opened the first Cold Stone Creamery in Hampton, Virginia. We live in an area called the Seven Cities. The seven cities interconnected, starting with the largest would be Virginia Beach, and the smallest would be Portsmouth. I was involved with a lot of organizations. Life member of the NAACP, a member of the American Legion, a member of Disabled American Veterans. I also was a church member, been involved with church work of my church, First Baptist of Hampton. For 15 years, I served there as chairman of the Board of Trustees. In the Navy, I worked as an electrician. After the Navy, I worked a couple of years, it was 3 or 4 years, as an electrician at at that time it was a Newport News shipbuilding and dry dock company. It was owned by Tenneco at the time. I worked with the company. After that, I left and went to the police department in Hampton, Virginia. You have to excuse me. Sometimes now my memory is not as quick as it used to be, but it's all there, and I thank God for that. It's great to be 89. Yes, okay. It's a funny story. I started Hampton. I started Hampton in 1956, and I graduated from Hampton in 1980. My first semester at Hampton, I enjoyed being on my own because I've been heavily disciplined and guided by my mother and father as to what I could do and what I couldn't do. They were Pentecostal and very Pentecostal, and they believed that certain things wasn't the kind of things that young people or children shouldn't be involved in. That doesn't mean that I was a goody-goody all the time. It was myself and two of my friends went into two of us, it was a Woolworth 5 and 10. One of the guys I stood at the front door, one of the other guys stood at the back door. And then the third one went in and walked around and got one of those boxes of real shiny yo-yos. We were selling them to our friends.
Was this a taken box or a purchase box?
No,
People want to know.
This was my experience with shoplifting that stopped me.
Okay.
We got the yo-yos and sold most of them. Some of them we sold for the price in the store, and some we sold them for whatever we could get for them. When we got toward the end, we just anybody give us anything for them because we wanted to hurry and get rid of them so our parents wouldn't catch us with them. So one day I was out in front of the house, in front of our house, yo-yoing, and my mother came out there and said, "Where y'all get those things from?" We hollered real loud, "Oh, we bought them." And she looked at us like, "Well, where did you get 50 cents to buy them? You paid your tithes. You did this. How do you get money left to do that? You wasn't supposed to have but enough to buy lunch." Well, we won't eat lunch next week. That didn't lie with her. She got with the other mothers. One of them had already called my mother and told her that she thought we had been in the store stealing something. Well, what she did was two of the three mothers got together, took the three of us to a store, asked for the manager. We walked in. Back at that time, we couldn't sit at the counter or get into anything in there because we could spend our money, but if we bought anything like sitting for a drink or anything, you had to go to the end of the counter, stand up, wait. You spend your lunch money for this? Well, you're going to spend your lunch money for it because you're going to pay for it. And after paying for them, she asked the manager how much were they, and he said, "Well, I'll give you the price of the wholesale, and they can pay that." So he gave her the price. And she says, "Well, okay." My friend's mother says, "And we need to do something else too. That's just not enough to stop you from doing this." So she and my mother start talking over in the corner to each other, and they came back and says, what they're going to do after school for the next week, they'll come by, work for you, do anything you want in the store. Cleaning up the front, cleaning up the counters, doing anything you want them to do. So after that, that was our first start of shoplifting. We stopped shoplifting after that. I never did any more shoplifting after that. It's enough for me.
So is that what took you into being a police officer? Let's talk about that story. I believe you mentioned it in your book that what made you decide to be a police officer. Do you mind sharing your story? Why you became a police officer?
I started off with I used to have a bad taste in my mouth for police officers. So when I was working on the police department, we worked as football games, baseball games, all of the student activities at the school. One time I was working a football game and I met a police officer in one of the sister cities in Newport News, an officer named Lovie. Mr. Lovett I said he was about 10 years older than me at the time, maybe less. I told him I had a distaste for police officers. He said, well, why? I mean, I said, well, every time I turn around, they're stopping me, catch me walking here. They want to know what you doing out here. Are you drunk? And I wasn't even drinking. I mean, in the age I did.
So pretty much the same profiling that our young men have to deal with now.
Definitely. So anyway, he says, well, John, the only way we're going to change this is we get more black police officers. In our cities, the cities around here, they had only been find black police officers for a few years. So he into it. And he was a very likable person, personable, and had the feel of a very good police officer because he was always polite to people and talk to them, and he was slow to lock up, but quick to tell you where you were wrong. Well, when he told you what you were wrong about, it was no yelling, screaming, or trying to punch you or kick you in the butt like the others did when I was a child. So he suggested that I try his police department. And I said, well, if I'm going to try the police department, I'm going to try the one in my own city. But he said, well, put in applications. And Hampton called me first. And I was glad because that was the city. I went on the police department and started off walking the beat doing toll work. And at that time, they had walking beats. You start on a walking beat, and then you move on to a riding beat. So at my walking beat, I worked that for a couple of years. Then I was I was promoted to corporal and put into the youth bureau. Youth bureau here, we had a youth bureau. You dealt with crimes against juveniles, family crime, and crimes committed by juveniles. That was a lot of kind of heartening work because I ran into young people who had done who were involved in some of the same things I was, like cutting school or shoplifting, One officer, my officer at the time, Lieutenant Deal, actually Deal was my officer at that time. Deal told me, he says, as a policeman, you got to remember two things. You treat everybody like you would want to be treated if you were in the same situation.
Right.
And it's only mandatory that you arrest if it's a felony. Most misdemeanors you can give warnings, but you do need to bring in a few every now and then to let everybody know that you're out there. So when I was working in the feeder section, that's the fisher department time.
Yeah, I can tell him a little bit about the history. So, where he's talking about in Phoebus, it's a part of Hampton. This is right near Fort Monroe. Some of the first slaves came in. So this whole area was, it was a party area in some corners. So this was when you were working the beat in Hampton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When I started Hampton, I used to party a lot, chase girls a lot. And first semester, my GPA was 1.9. They called me in and says, if you want to keep the scholarship, you got to bring your GPA up to a 2.5. I can do that. I could do that. I do that good in high school, get behind, catch up. Well, the next semester, it had dropped. But when I went home for the end of the semester, got the letter said my GPA at that time was 1.8. So instead of going up, I had dropped back. And they said I could come back the next semester, but if my grades didn't come up to a 2.5, that I would be thrown out.
So, is this how you transitioned into the United States Navy?
Yes, it is.
So, let me come home with a GPA like that. I probably would have never lived it down, but it's okay. So let's just start out about your book, A View from Church Hill. What made you write this book? What pulled on you to put your life into a memoir?
Well, the idea had come to me at my 60th birthday party. All my kids and my close friends, my mentees and co-workers got together. And I said, I think I want to write a book on my story. I was heavily encouraged by especially my grandchildren and children. But I didn't get started then. It took me like 2 years off and on to get it finished to the point that it didn't get ready for publishing.
So if you have the desire to write a book, I want to encourage you to do just that. Just take your thoughts and just build a journal. Just put everything you have in your heart on paper. And that's exactly what he did. He put everything in his heart on paper. And then this gentleman was able to go through and help develop the stories, to help build the stories. I wanted to go to the story about that really was profound, and it kind of brings us back to where we are in this climate right now. The story when you traveled with my godfather from DC to, was it Atlanta? And you guys got stopped in South Carolina and were temporarily held.
That story. This was a friend of mine that was working for the Japanese consulate in Atlanta, and he had driven his boss up to DC, and he stopped by on the way back to Atlanta and says, "Man, this is a lonely ride." I said, "You want to ride with me down there? I'll give you a plane fare back. If I ride with you, I'll pay my own way back. I just want to ride. I like riding in a car with diplomatic tags." Once we got into South Carolina, we were pulled over by a trooper. And I thought it was a state trooper, but it was just a county sheriff. Told us, okay, well, it's going to cost you $300. We said, no, we got diplomatic tag. We were driving, and told them who he was driving for. They had us to follow them down to the precinct or sheriff's station, wherever it was. But it was about 20 miles off the highway where we were. After we got down there, they was about to lock us up. And they had to go through everything, and I never told them that I was a police officer. We were riding in a diplomatic car. We worked for diplomats, so that's it. You can't do this. Well, can I get my phone call? He said, yes, you get one phone call. So he called, and he called his boss, who in turn got in touch with the U.S. ambassador or somebody up in the State Department. They put us in the cage, and about 15 minutes later, they came back and unlocked us. So got torn up front. Somebody on the phone wanted to talk to you. And it was, at the time, it was Robert Kennedy wanted to talk to him, the attorney general at that time. He asked him the guy gave the phone to the sheriff, said he wants to talk to you. He talked to them for about 2 minutes, and the guy says, you guys can go. I said, well, will you just back out and show us where it is? No, we can't lead you back out, but you can go. You got your car out.
They didn't know they were too scared to let y'all back out, so they wanted somebody else to catch you. We're in a climate that it hasn't changed. You're still pulled over driving while black, but the fact that you're driving and traveling with diplomatic tags on, they still question. So that was Robert Kennedy, and wasn't it someone else you mentioned he talked to? It was the governor of South Carolina at the time.
No, later I found out that the Justice Department had talked to the governor of South Carolina about it. But actually, of all my days, that's the only time I ever got in jail, and I never said a word. I did have my badge in my credentials when I got there and put everything in their lockers. I just kept my badge concealed and put it all in the locker together. Fortunately, I didn't have a weapon with me because actually the rule is if you cross state lines with the weapon, the first thing you're supposed to do is contact that state police when you get into that state with one, and then they would have it on record. So if anybody else tried to inquire. Right. So it was a good thing you didn't travel with it. I'm sure it would have made you guys' situation a little tougher. And if we could have two black men driving with diplomatic tags and still get pulled over, they know, I don't care where they were in South Carolina, this is like something you guys are trained with from the beginning, right? To identify these type of tags. Yes, we are. Diplomats in the United States have this same type of tag. It's not a different tag for a different country. All of the countries and all their vehicles get the same diplomatic tags, and it says on that diplomatic. We didn't really have immunity, although we were in the car. He was an employee of the Japanese embassy, but yet they stopped him anyway. And when he's driving diplomatic vehicles, he has immunity during that time. That's the only time he doesn't have immunity like the diplomats have. So I started out the interview talking about your years working in the police department. I wanted to ask you about the opportunity with this Sears Foundation. Opportunity to work with the Officer Friendly program that has started with the Sears Foundation. How did you get that opportunity? Myself and another member of the Crime Prevention Unit went to Louisville, Kentucky, to the National Institute of Crime Prevention and Security. There was a speaker from Sears Foundation that talked to us about the Officer Friendly program that he had out in the Midwest. He said the program was declining in popularity because they've been using the same materials for 10 years, and a lot of the schools were dropping out. So he wanted something more innovative to bring people back into it and expand it all over. So he suggested anybody that was interested, the foundation will offer a grant. Anybody that was interested to write and let them know what they're interested in handling and how they would go about doing it. And that from that correspondence, he would select someone to try the program. So after about 3 weeks after writing in the program, what we wanted, we got a letter back that it was confirmed that he was accepting our offer. And he came down, talked to me, the assistant superintendent for elementary education, and to my chief and my lieutenant at the time. I hadn't made sergeant at that time. When he talked to all of those people, he says, okay, get back with me with what you want to do. Before we write the letter asking for the grant, the chief of police says, you got to clear it with the superintendent of schools. If he's in for it, then I'm in for it. So I had talked to the superintendent, he was another friend of mine. We served on the Boys Club board of directors together at the time. And we had become good friends because we'd been on the board together for about 5 years. So he agreed, and Raymond Washington was superintendent of schools, and he assigned Ms. Geraldine Courtney, the assistant superintendent for elementary ed. So she and I got together. We met for a couple of times. Then I selected one other police officer, and she selected 5 teachers, one from each of the lower grades, to be involved. And we worked together. We built what we called a classroom kit. It was a nice little kit. I used to have pictures of it. We built a kit with an artist, with the school artist, Ms. Copper, worked everything up. And we worked on it for about 3 months, and we put together the kit, and we got prices for getting it all priced out and developed and everything. And he gave the contract to our company. We started the company, Images and Talk. We had it assembled there was an institution that worked with people with disabilities. We had them assemble it. We showed them how we wanted it, and they put it together like that. Police departments throughout the Midwest and throughout the Southeast. So we had 6 of the 7 cities that worked with the program, and 1 city wasn't involved.
In the state of Virginia. Okay.
Yes.
Which of the 7 cities did not do it?
It was Suffolk. Suffolk was a very large city at that time in territory, but a very small city in population. At that time, Suffolk had a population of somewhere around 15, 20,000, and the rest of the cities had more than 100,000. For development and delivery was 5 years. We distributed them for 5 years, and while then we had the company start working on trying to get other contracts.
So when you mentioned the company you started, Images, how did Images play a part? So if we could take a step back and you can help me bridge the gaps with what was Images' responsibility in your whole involvement in this?
It was our responsibility for Images to develop the kit, get the different components of the kit published, printed, the toys that we had in there. You had to get the art, we had to get everything. We were involved with one multimedia company because we had those tapes in there talking about police officers, and we had full-size pictures of police department. I was thinking a man police officer and a woman police officer, life-size on posters. We had coloring books. We had explanation books. We talked about police work, talked about what the police were supposed to be doing, and the role of a policeman, how our role as policemen was to protect and serve. The things to make young people interested in really getting involved with police officers.
Awesome.
We had to select the contributors, and then we had to get somebody to put the kit together. They put it together for us. It was circulated to about anywhere between 46 and 50 cities throughout the United States.
So about 50 plus cities throughout the United States, predominantly Midwest and in this area.
Yeah. Well, then it started to spread in Virginia. It went to several other cities in Virginia. We started getting some cities in Maryland. We shipped a lot to the Middle West.
Yeah, I actually have someone here. Her name is E-Nurse, and she said we used to use those kits at her grammar school in the Midwest, and she's in that Chicago area. Officer-friendly books. Yes, they were coloring books in there, and I remember it's a life-size, almost picture of a police officer, and it was a teacher too, right?
We had another book, had a following book with teachers in it, and how teachers connect with police officers, the booklet that came with the kit.
I mentioned it last week that they have the officer-friendly kit that he created in the Hampton History Museum in Hampton, Virginia. I took out pieces because I had forgotten a lot of what was in the kit, but they have a couple of the pieces that's in the box displayed. So it was like a walk down memory lane when I go in there, and it's like, hey, somebody I recognize, which is always good. So we talked about your business with Images. We talked about your background, your education.
As a policeman, during that time, the salary, when I started in the police department, $4,800 a year. Most police officers had to work at extra jobs. I was putting the houses together. I was working, I had 4 people I was working for. We had in houses that they had up to rent, or if they were about to sell.
You were subcontracted out to do that work?
Yeah, and I had a friend that was a licensed electrician. I had another friend that was a licensed plumber, and we would do all the work, and they would come in and inspect it and tell us what we had wrong. We'd fix that up. They would always check both the electrician and the plumber. Would always check everything before they called the inspectors to inspect. I did that for years.
But that was extra police work, right? When you got the extra off-duty hours. Now, let me tell you guys, that was probably a joy more for my brothers than me because I was way too young. But the benefits of him working those late hours is the Hampton Coliseum, at the time, it was one of 2 the largest arenas to have concerts and shows. And had the honor of meeting a lot of famous people, Muhammad Ali, and you actually was a bodyguard for a pope at the time.
I wasn't a pope. It was the archbishop for the area, Fulton J. Sheen. I'll never forget his name. We talked a lot. I had to shadow him for 2 days while he was in the area. I got a lot. I learned a lot from him.
Can you remember one lesson you may have learned from him that would be good to share with the audience?
he confirmed a lesson that I had learned from my father. I used to be real critical of things in the Pentecostal church that doesn't do things that we weren't allowed to do. And my father told me a long time ago that you don't have to live for those people. You got to live for yourself. Because when time comes for judgment, you're going to be judged not on what somebody else did, but what you did. And when I met Bishop Sheen, he told me the same thing in a different way. He says, Christ was a servant of the people, and he lived among the people, and he treated the people as people wherever he went. And he talked about the story on the says, have you been taught the story on the side of the road? I said, yeah, I had to learn all of that when I was a kid. I had to learn 13th chapter of Corinthians and the whole chapter, the Psalms we had to learn. So we talked for a while, and he told me, so the whole thing that you get out of all of those stories is that you're supposed to treat the least of these you would want to be treated yourself. So I put all of those things together, and that's what made me go back into the church, because I had gotten away from the church. I had gotten away from organized religion.
Who was one of the most interested people?
Muhammad Ali. He was a very interesting fellow, because when I was in the Navy, I had seen in Rome during those Olympics, and we got free tickets as military people to go to some, and I chose to go to the boxing. And I saw him in one of his earlier fights there. So I told him about that. He started talking about a lot of things. But he was very interesting. At that time, he was a very young man. I was an older man. He said, yeah, I like cops like you. He said, I've been someplace and they put a cop to shadow me, and it was the worst thing I wanted to see.
Wow. And we're talking about
that. He said just the way they acted. And one of the most interesting people I met was Gladys Knight. She was extremely down to earth. At the time, she was one of my favorite performers.
I wanted to also just ask a little bit more about your book. One of the most profound things in the book was one of the worst investigation cases he ever had to go on. You want to share a little bit about that story? Oh, that's another story. Okay. Well,
But you said little girl. I had three different cases as a youth officer that really burned me to my core and it made me more determined to work with young people. One was a little girl that had the thing to her throat by her father, and the other one that was abused by her mother's boyfriend. Both of those stories are a little detailed in the book.
Right. How old was I during that time? How did that make you feel, seeing two young ladies and have a daughter at home, that level of trauma?
You were about 4 years old at the time. And my partner and I at the court, the guy, my partner told the guy, says, man, what you did to that kid is going to be done to you when you get in the joint.
Wow. I'm sure. I just want to thank everybody for your time. And thank you for supporting the author, A View from Church Hill, I Woke Up in My Right Mind, John H. Coleman Jr. And at the end of every show, I like our guests to share their final thoughts. And these final thoughts could be based off of the conversations we had today, any information you wanted to share or encourage others in business, leadership, or Christ.
Well, first off, I do thank you for having me. In business, in the 3 or 4 businesses that I've been involved with, I learned 2 things. It's always good to have a good business plan. And business plans are just outlines that you should go back and bring them up to date as you go along, or you'll find yourself getting in trouble with your state and just losing money. It's easier to build your plan and continue to build it, to make it a strong plan. The stronger your business plan, the better your business will operate. Another thing, you're gonna win some and lose some. There's nobody that goes in business that doesn't lose money at some time. Sometimes they have to lose quite a bit before they start to make money. So you have to be cognizant of that and work hard to make sure that you get it right. You develop it to make it right, because from the beginning, seldom do you have it right from the beginning unless you have some experience working with the type of business you want to go with, and of working with someone else.
It's a good word to share to the business owners. And it's ironically, I share that a lot, that, once you build that business plan, you got to keep building it. And we make mistakes, pick it up and keep going.
One more thing from businesses too. You need to make public contacts. You need to contact people in high places, low places, and go with the idea that you want to meet people from all types of life, all different forms of life, and treat them like you would like to be treated if you were that way. Make sure your employees do the same thing. It doesn't hurt to do some volunteering in your communities. That's one way to really gain support of businesses. If you're volunteering in your communities, and urge your employees to volunteer too, and bring those experiences back to the business. It will strengthen the business.
Right.
One thought I'd like to leave you with is just, I know people are different religions and different things. I'm Baptist. Volunteering in the church, you get a lot of help volunteering in most churches because you've got people in churches from all different walks of life. And the more you work with them, the more they get to know you. If you're in a business, the more your business will thrive. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. Such a blessing to share the stage with you, Dad.